When I think of rhetoric being the art and science of listening as compared to the art and science of speaking, I really reflect on my experience with rhetoric both as a professional and as a parent. When an individual or practitioner really takes the time to stop and listen, it really supports the use of observation skills, critical thinking, analysis, and even evaluating. By doing so and having that pause to think before you act and even weighing out different possible solutions in evaluating which solution may yield the best outcome, rhetoric really provides an individual a lot of important information and details in order to make sound decisions or the best decision possible in a given situation. I think as a parent, one of the challenging situations I've dealt with when my son was 2.5 years old at daycare, where he was moved up to the next class, which is a normal transition as they move from class to class, as they get older, different milestones, different curriculum teachings that they have built in for the children. When he went to the early 3-year-old room at the beginning of the summer, we had a very hard time transitioning. Went from a room where there was no problems, all positive reports, really just overall great experience, to having boo-boo reports of he was being bitten, and then starting in the reports that he was biting. He was being hit, then got the reports he was then hitting. The school is sending out to all the parents in that room a general letter about behavior and what's acceptable and not acceptable for the daycare center. That transition within a week was very difficult. Just the first few weeks, one notification and another, and just really having a hard transition and a little confusing. The daycare workers really were not maybe as supportive or clear communication in terms of what was causing my son's behavior or what was going on, just more of he did this again or he did that, becoming a little bit more, it was problematic versus trying to be solution oriented. I remember that after the third or fourth notification and talking to his teacher, having different emotions taking over, not knowing what to do, to the point where I took my son to the pediatrician to see if there was anything wrong with him, because we all of a sudden are experiencing these behaviors that were not existent in the prior room. At the time, professionally, I was a principal at an elementary school where we had a unit for ESE students for EBD, emotional behavior disabilities, in addition to ESE pre-K program. Working with children and children with behaviors, it was in my wheelhouse. Not saying my son was perfect, but knowing my son, he's motivated by hugs and kisses. He does have an older sibling that's 6 years older, so they do roughhouse. So I could make the connection between maybe his older sister roughhousing a little bit too much with him, where maybe he's being rough to individuals. But when I took him to the pediatrician, just not sure what to do or how to proceed, it was very, very affirming with the pediatrician going through age-appropriate development milestones and how this is a phase and totally normal, that there's nothing wrong with him. Because in my mind, working with students, EBD students, I'm thinking, is this early onset? Is he having a hard time managing his emotions? So it's reaffirming having a professional put in perspective his age bracket, the transition, and really talking me through that what he was experiencing was normal. After that, probably a week after I took my son to the pediatrician, my husband and I were walking in on a Friday to pick him up. We're meeting his parents for dinner, and the director came out and said, "Oh, you're here. I need to talk to you." It's never a good thing when the director comes over, is needs an impromptu meeting of, "Oh, I've been waiting for you at the front desk," which I've never seen her during pickup, usually at the front desk. And then we're brought into that room, the room with floor to ceiling glass that you can see through, where we're sitting in her office. And the conversations are not always good. So my husband and I went in, sat down. She starts out with reviewing the difficulties of our son in the room that he's having. Of course, being caught off guard, a little mix of emotions get stirred up. It's that feeling of the emotional quicksand easily creeping up on you to want to react. But taking a breath, being in a reflective mindset, I just listened. I listened to her to go through the different incident reports and recapping the different biting or hitting that they've experienced with him being in the room. I even remember her talking to us about how they've already had to dismiss another student, and she specifically told us who had autism that he was not a good fit for one of their classrooms and that this is optional, it's not required, and their program's not for everyone. And I was taken a little aback by that, where by listening to her, really listening to what she was saying and how she was saying her information, this was not a conversation about let's work together on how to overcome this challenge, which is what I'm used to as a principal at that point of we have X situation, let's talk about how we can improve. This was more of a situation of your kid's doing wrong, this is what he's doing, almost like a verbal constant battering and comparing to another child that they had that has nothing to do with my child, but yet giving us what the next step is as an outcome, which is being dismissed from the daycare school. I remember at that moment thinking how inappropriate that comment was about the other child, but also her alluding to that the next step may be dismissal, which we, besides the reports, have had no conversation, minus signing the reports at the teacher classroom door that this was at the point of being such a huge problem that this is what they were thinking. I remember sitting there, shifting in my seat and going, okay, tell me about what is going on. Tell me about what is the antecedent for my son's actions when this is happening. And I explained to her, I said, as a elementary school principal and working with students who have behaviors, I said there's usually always an antecedent of something happening prior to said behavior, especially if the behavior has been reoccurring or has occurred more than once. My goal of having that betterment mindset was to find a workable solution of how we could work together to help my son improve in his new environment. It was obvious that he was having a hard time transitioning in the new room, and we needed to be able to have a positive outcome. After I asked about the antecedent of what was happening for behavior, I remember her body language changing and looking at me and saying that my experience as an elementary school principal is not relevant to the daycare center as they deal with early childhood education. Feeling that quicksand of emotion right there at the toes of my feet, I really wanted to say something back to her. But taking a breath, putting on a smile on my face, and my husband knows that not all smiles are good smiles with me. I remember him shifting slightly and kicking me a little bit under the table because I was not taking her comment very professionally or well. That I looked at her and very directly said that while I understand their early childhood education, we have an early childhood program, and recap the students for our ESE pre-K program that we work with at our school. So while they may have different strategies for early childhood, good teaching is good teaching. Again, what are the antecedents that are leading up to my child's behavior at the time of the incident? Her response was, well, they don't really focus on that. Okay, if you're expecting my son to change, how are you going about changing it? He's 2.5. How can we work together to help him learn good habits? What are you doing as a school when this happens? And she told me that when this happens, they talk to him and they tell him that not to do it again. Obviously, this has happened more than once, that strategy is not working. What can we do to help him learn the good habits and to curb the bad habits? And she basically said that their expectations at this daycare center, which we've been with them for years with my older daughter and now my son at the time, by talking to him at 2.5 years old, mind you, that he is expected to be able to learn from his mistakes and not do it again. Okay, that's not working. So I changed my angle and I said, well, talk to me about the routines in the classroom. What are the daily routines or structures that you implement in this classroom that we can try to mimic at home to help bridge what he experiences at home to at school? Are there certain routines, certain phrases that we can be implementing at home to help him see the connection between home and school? And she went back and said, well, they can't account for every routine and every procedure in every room. Okay, so I reshifted my frame again. So if you're saying that my son is exhibiting a behavior that you're actually looking at dismissing him from your school, and of course she backpedaled and said, well, we're not there yet. We're just having a good faith talk about your son's behavior. But to put it plainly, in my response to her is that is a possible outcome because you put it out there very plainly referencing another child. That has nothing to do with my situation. So I told her, I said, what can you do in terms of strategies in the classroom to help my son, curb his behavior and learn good habits? Is there a behavioral intervention plan that can be put in place? Is there different strategies that the teacher does something different to help him? Part of me really just wanted to, every time she had a negative response back that was just putting up a wall, that I just really wanted to put my foot in that quicksand of emotions and just snap at her, because she had no care in the world the way she was communicating of my son being successful at the school. It was more of either he falls in line on his own, is what she was communicating by them just talking to him, or he has to go somewhere else, which that didn't sit well with me. But keeping a reflective mindset, keeping my feet out of that emotional quicksand, really listening and using the rhetoric that she was using, watching her body language, her tone, the way she worded things. I really listened so I knew how to respond back, because my end goal that I was focused on is how do I help my son be successful? Even if that's not her goal, that was my goal. And that was the outcome I wanted as a solution out of this situation. The conversation ended with her saying to me that this is a new teacher and that they have to evaluate the class makeup to make sure that their teacher is successful, and that not every parent is as understanding as if their child is being bitten or hit, that they also have to deal with other parents who are considered victims. So I looked at her and I said, I understand that. However, my son has an equal right of being in that room as anyone else, but I also reflect on the room he just came from. There were 0 issues, 0 behavioral reports, 0 biting, 0 hitting, but yet when he transferred this new room, it started out with him being bit, him being hit, and then him, after learning his behavior for other students, and now he's engaging in it. I said, I do wonder what the structures of the classroom are that the teacher's using, or if there's actually room for improvement for yourself or whoever is over her to help with structures. I said, have you even observed her room to see what routines, procedures? It could be an easy fix as implementing a procedure to help the teacher be more successful, to be more preventative. Granted, I may have been telling her what to do her job. However, it was, from my professional experience, a valid point of view. She did not appreciate it and said that they will just observe moving forward. We left that meeting as the daycare did not like my child, and there was a target on his back that if he didn't shape up, they were going to ship him out. And that was just I thought, very unfair, especially reflecting back on the pediatrician saying how this isn't a normal developmental milestone. Transitions to be hard. It's a way of them expressing themselves. And yet here she is, just very cold and uncaring and not caring about my son being successful, where that was my focus.